They won't understand why you disappeared. They'll call it weakness, failure, or running away. But you're not hiding, you're rebuilding. There's a kind of transformation that can't happen in front of an audience. Growth requires solitude. Power requires silence. The world loves noise and distraction, but real change happens in the shadows when no one is watching. In this audiobook, Disappear to Rebuild, The Power of Quiet Transformation, you'll learn why stepping back is not quitting its strategy. This is about becoming stronger, sharper, and more focused when no one is paying attention. It's about using solitude to craft a version of yourself that the world isn't ready for. Not for validation, but for evolution. If you've ever felt left out, counted out, or invisible good, that's where the work begins. Let's start. Chapter 1. The Decision to Disappear. There comes a moment when you realize you need to disappear, not because you're giving up, but because you're choosing to evolve. Staying in the same environment, around the same people, doing the same things, is keeping you stuck. Growth demands space. Transformation requires silence. So you make the decision. Disappear for a while, not to escape life, but to rebuild it. Disappearing is not about running from problems. It's about stepping back to face them head-on without distractions. The noise of the world can cloud your judgment. Everyone has advice, opinions, and expectations. But when you remove yourself from the chaos, you finally hear the one voice that matters, your own. That's when real change begins. Most people never disappear because they're addicted to being seen. They want to stay in the spotlight, even if it's killing their progress. But the strongest people understand that stepping away is part of the process. You don't grow in the crowd, you grow in the quiet. You don't sharpen your mind under applause, you do it in solitude. The decision to disappear is uncomfortable. It means saying no to distractions, leaving behind temporary pleasures, and stepping into isolation. But discomfort is a sign you're on the right path. Growth isn't supposed to feel easy. It's supposed to stretch you, strip away the unnecessary, and force you to rebuild from the ground up. When you disappear, you're no longer performing for others. You stop trying to keep up appearances. You stop worrying about how you look to the world. All your energy goes into becoming, not pretending. This is when your foundation gets solid. This is when you stop talking about change and actually create it. Choosing to disappear also protects you from emotional noise. When you're constantly around people, their energy affects yours. Their opinions can become your doubts. But when you step back, you reset. You clear out the mental clutter. You start thinking for yourself again. That clarity is priceless. Solitude forces you to meet yourself without filters. There's no pretending in the dark. There's no hiding from your flaws when you're alone. But that's exactly why disappearing is powerful. You confront the real you, the undisciplined parts, the weaknesses, the excuses, and you work on them without anyone watching. Most people fear solitude because it feels like rejection. But real solitude isn't about being rejected, it's about selecting yourself. You choose to invest in your own growth. You choose to put your time, energy, and focus into becoming better. That's not isolation, that's preparation. The decision to disappear also protects your goals. When you're constantly talking about your plans, you leak energy. You invite opinions, resistance, and distractions. But when you keep your growth private, you build momentum in silence. No one knows what you're up to, and that's exactly how it should be. Disappearing gives you time to study yourself. You learn your patterns, both good and bad. You figure out what triggers laziness, what feeds discipline, and what holds you back. This self-awareness is the foundation of transformation. Without it, you're just guessing. With it, you're evolving. When you disappear, you break free from the need to explain yourself. You stop justifying your decisions. You stop defending your silence. You simply focus on becoming. The results will speak for you when the time is right. Until then, you stay hidden, working in the dark where no one can interrupt the process. The decision to disappear often comes after failure. You realize that trying to fix your life in public isn't working, so you step back. You give yourself the grace to fall apart and the space to rebuild. This isn't weakness, it's strategy. It's choosing to repair the foundation before adding more weight. Disappearing allows you to redefine success on your own terms. You're no longer chasing validation. You're no longer obsessed with impressing people. You focus on mastering yourself, improving your mindset, and becoming a better human. That's the real win at public praise, but personal growth. In the silence of disappearing, you learn patience. You stop rushing results. You understand that real transformation takes time. It's not a 30-day plan, it's a life shift. You stop looking for hacks and start building habits. And slowly, quietly, you become the kind of person who doesn't need to tell the world they're growing. Their life shows it. At some point, you realize that disappearing isn't about leaving the world forever. It's about stepping back long enough to return stronger. You're not running away, you're leveling up. And when you come back, you won't just be different. You'll be unrecognizable because you chose to disappear and rebuild in silence. Chapter 2. Silence is where strength is built. Silence isn't weakness, it's the birthplace of real strength. In a world addicted to noise, silence feels uncomfortable, but that discomfort is exactly where growth lives. When you strip away distractions, opinions, and constant stimulation, you're left face to face with your own mind. That's where the real work begins. Most people avoid silence because it exposes their inner chaos. They'd rather stay busy than confront their fears, regrets, and doubts. But silence doesn't create those feelings, it reveals them. And once you see them clearly, you can finally start doing the work to transform them. In silence, you begin to build mental toughness. There's no crowd to cheer you on, no one to validate your effort. It's just you, alone, stacking disciplined days. When you learn to keep promises to yourself in private, you build a level of integrity that's rare. That's where real confidence comes from. Silence also teaches you control. When you stop reacting to every external stimulus, you start mastering your impulses. You no longer need to post every win or respond to every critic. You move strategically, quietly, and that self-restraint builds internal power that cannot be shaken by outside noise. Strength is not just physical, it's mental, emotional, and spiritual. And those dimensions of strength are built in silence. In the quiet, you reflect, adjust, and refine. You build systems that make you unbreakable. You set standards for yourself that don't depend on who's watching. That's where true power lives. In the silence, you develop patience. You stop looking for shortcuts because you realize there aren't any. Growth takes time, and that time feels long when no one is around to distract you. But the man who can stay consistent in silence becomes unstoppable when the world starts paying attention again. Silence also makes you more aware of your weaknesses. When there's no noise to hide behind, your flaws become obvious. But instead of running from them, you face them head-on. You work on your discipline. You adjust your mindset. You patch the holes in your character that would have destroyed you later. The world teaches you to seek comfort and constant connection, but silence forces you to sit with discomfort and develop inner connection. You stop outsourcing your happiness. You stop relying on others for strength. You build it yourself, brick by brick, in the quiet moments no one sees. When you embrace silence, you stop chasing validation. You no longer need applause to keep moving. You no longer need approval to feel worthy. You move for you. You grow for you. And that independence makes you powerful because your motivation becomes self-generated, not crowd-dependent. Silence is where strategy is created. When you're not bombarded by opinions and trends, you can think clearly, you can assess your life honestly, you can create a blueprint for growth without outside interference. The best plans are made in silence, far away from the noise of the crowd. Building strength in silence also means learning how to handle boredom without self-destruction. Most people seek stimulation when they're bored. They scroll, gossip, or distract themselves. But you, in silence, learn how to sit with stillness and focus on what matters. That self-control sharpens you. In quiet solitude, you train resilience. You don't panic when life slows down. You don't crumble when no one's watching. You keep going, quietly stacking wins, knowing that strength isn't built in applause, it's built in repetition. Over time, this makes you relentless. Silence teaches you to listen to yourself, to your intuition, and to reality. You hear what your mind is really saying. You hear the lessons in failure. You notice patterns you would have missed in the noise. That awareness makes you sharper, more calculated, and harder to defeat. In silence, you build emotional balance. You stop reacting emotionally to every trigger. You learn how to breathe, pause, and choose your response. That control turns you into a leader of your own life. You don't get pulled into chaos because you've mastered calm. At the end of the day, silence isn't a void, it's a tool. It's the environment where the strongest version of you is built. While others fear the quiet, you use it. You mold yourself in it. And when you step back into the world, you'll carry a strength that only comes from time spent in silence. Chapter 3. The Power of Isolation for Growth. Isolation is not punishment, it's a tool. It's the space where you separate yourself from distractions and recalibrate your life. Growth in isolation happens because you finally stop catering to the world's expectations. You create distance between yourself and the noise, so you can focus on your next evolution. Most people fear isolation because it feels lonely, but there's a difference between loneliness and intentional solitude. Isolation for growth is a conscious decision. You're not escaping life, you're elevating it. You're removing yourself from the crowd so you can return stronger, smarter, and sharper. In isolation, you have the chance to reset your habits. No one is there to influence your decisions. You don't have to explain your routines. You can strip everything down to the essentials and rebuild from scratch. This is how you break bad patterns and install new systems that create real change. The power of isolation is that it forces you to face yourself without distractions. There's no one to blame, no one to lean on, just you and the reality of who you are. That's uncomfortable, but it's also empowering, because once you face your flaws, you can fix them without pretending. Isolation strengthens mental resilience. When you're alone, you don't have external motivation to keep you going. You have to find it within. That internal drive is more powerful than any outside influence because it doesn't fade when the crowd disappears. It becomes part of who you are. Being isolated removes the temptation to compare yourself to others. Social comparison is one of the biggest traps in life. But when you're focused on your own lane, you stop worrying about timelines, achievements, or competition. You move at your own pace, building according to your own blueprint. Isolation also helps you heal. Emotional wounds don't close properly when you stay in toxic environments. Stepping away gives you space to process pain, release resentment, and rebuild trust in yourself. Healing in silence makes you stronger because you're not performing recovery, you're actually doing the work. When you're isolated, you reconnect with your core values. The world constantly tries to shape you into something else. But in solitude, you remember who you are. You ask yourself the hard questions. What do I really want? What am I willing to sacrifice? Who do I refuse to become? Isolation sharpens your focus. Without constant interruptions, you can go deeper into your work, your training, and your studies. You stop multitasking life. You become fully present in your growth process. That deep focus accelerates progress faster than any busy, distracted lifestyle ever could. In isolation, you stop seeking approval. There's no audience to impress, no critics to silence. You realize the only person you need to prove anything to is yourself. That shift changes everything. You become self-driven, and that drive turns you into a disciplined, purpose-led individual. Isolation also teaches you how to manage time differently. Without the distractions of social settings, you realize how much time you used to waste. You learn to respect each hour, to prioritize what matters, and to cut out the useless. Time becomes your currency, and you start spending it wisely. Growth in isolation means you're forced to develop discipline. You can't rely on anyone else to hold you accountable. No one's checking if you followed through. That's where real discipline is born, when you do the hard things, even when no one is watching, even when no one cares. When you isolate for growth, you become more creative. Without constant input from others, your mind has room to explore new ideas. You stop regurgitating what the world says and start forming your own thoughts, strategies, and solutions. Creativity thrives in solitude because silence sparks originality. Isolation reveals the difference between urgency and importance. In the world, everything feels urgent: messages, notifications, obligations. But in isolation, you learn to focus only on what's important. You prioritize growth, health, learning, and building the life you actually want, not the life others expect. Isolation teaches you emotional independence. You learn to manage your own moods, regulate your own mind, and comfort yourself without outside help. That emotional control is rare, and it makes you unstoppable because you no longer crumble when life gets hard or when support is absent. Solitude gives you the chance to develop mastery over your craft. Whether it's training, learning, or building, isolation allows you to go deeper. You repeat the reps in silence. You refine your skills without fanfare. Mastery requires focus, and focus is easiest to cultivate when you're alone. When you isolate to grow, you eliminate the pressure to rush. You stop feeling like you need to keep up with everyone else. You stop living by deadlines set by society. You build quietly, slowly, intentionally, knowing that the right growth takes time and you're in it for the long game. Isolation also exposes who your real friends are. When you step back, the ones who respect your growth will understand your distance. The ones who don't will fade away. That's not loss, that's clarity. Isolation purifies your circle and helps you align with people who match your new mindset. Coming out of isolation, you become a different person. The world will notice, but you won't need to explain it. You'll move differently because you've built something stronger inside yourself. The quiet work pays off, and when you return, you'll carry a level of calm confidence that can't be faked. In the end, isolation is a tool for transformation. It's not about hiding from life, it's about preparing for it. When you use isolation to grow, you build a version of yourself that's unshakable, disciplined, and deeply connected to purpose. You return to the world, not the same, but reborn. Chapter 4. When the world is distracted, you focus. Focus is a rare skill in a world addicted to distraction. Everywhere you look, people are glued to their phones, chasing dopamine hits from likes, shares, and endless scrolling. But if you want to separate yourself from the crowd, you need to make a different choice. While the world is distracted, you focus. Most people never realize how much time they waste. They think they're busy, but they're just reacting to noise. Notifications control their day. Algorithms hijack their attention. But the man who can block out the noise becomes dangerous. He's not playing the same game as everyone else, he's building in silence. Focus is not natural anymore, it's a discipline. You have to train it like a muscle. You have to decide what matters and cut out what doesn't. This means saying no to things that feel urgent but aren't important. It means choosing growth over entertainment, purpose over pleasure. When you focus while the world is distracted, you move ahead quietly. While they waste hours on meaningless arguments and mindless scrolling, you're studying, training, and executing. Over months and years, this creates a gap between you and the average person, so wide they'll never catch up. Distraction is a trap that keeps most people weak. They're too busy keeping up with everyone else's life to build their own. But when you focus, you build momentum. You stop being reactive and start being proactive. Your days have direction, your time has purpose, your results compound. Focus gives you clarity. You're not chasing 100 goals at once. You pick one target and lock in. You wake up with a plan, execute with discipline, and ignore the noise. That kind of focus makes you sharper, faster, and more consistent than the people constantly chasing trends. When the world is distracted, you build in silence. You don't announce every move. You don't post every small win. You keep your head down, knowing that real success happens behind the scenes. By the time they realize you've been working, you'll already be too far ahead. Focus teaches you patience. The world wants instant results, but mastery takes time. When you focus, you stop expecting quick wins. You embrace the process. You do the work day after day, knowing that small steps lead to massive change if you stay locked in long enough. Distraction weakens discipline. Every time you check your phone out of habit, you reinforce a lack of control. But when you stay focused, you train your mind to resist impulses. You teach yourself to finish what you start. That habit builds strength, not just mental strength, but life strength. Focused men are rare because they're willing to be misunderstood. People will call you boring, obsessive, or antisocial when you choose focus over fun. But that's fine. You're not here to be average. You're here to build something bigger than temporary pleasure. You're here to build legacy. When you focus, you learn faster. Distraction splits your attention, it scatters your mind. But deep focus allows you to absorb knowledge, develop new skills, and create results at a level most people can't touch. You're not multitasking, you're mastering. The world is full of noise, news, gossip, trends, and opinions. But when you focus, you tune out the nonsense. You stop reacting to everything around you and start creating something meaningful. You become a builder, not a consumer. And builders win the long game. Focus also protects your energy. Distraction drains you. It leaves you feeling scattered and stressed. But focus gives you control over your mental space. You decide what deserves your attention. You stop letting life pull you in 1,000 directions and start moving with intention. When the world is distracted, you gain an advantage. While they're wasting time, you're building skills, stacking wins, and growing stronger. You're not waiting for permission. You're not looking for shortcuts. You're doing the work in silence, and that silence is turning into strength. Focus creates momentum that distraction can't match. Each focused day builds on the last. You wake up with more clarity, more discipline, and more results. That momentum compounds until you've created a life so solid that no distraction can shake it. When you focus, you build confidence. You trust yourself because you're keeping promises to yourself. You said you'd stay disciplined, and you did. You said you'd build something, and you're building it. That self-trust becomes a foundation no outside opinion can crack. Distraction keeps people stuck in cycles. They start something, get bored, get distracted, and quit. But you're not playing that game. You finish what you start. You stay consistent when others fall off. And because of that, you succeed in silence while they stay trapped in loops. Focused men move differently. They don't waste words. They don't explain themselves. They don't chase attention. They execute quietly every day, knowing that mastery isn't about being seen, it's about becoming someone no one expected. Focus turns you into that person. In the end, when the world is distracted, you don't join the chaos, you rise above it. You use silence as your advantage. You use focus as your weapon. And while everyone else is scrolling, arguing, and wasting time, you're becoming the man they won't recognize when you return. Chapter 5. Quiet work creates loud results. Quiet work is the kind of work that no one sees, but everyone eventually feels. It's the hours you put in when no one is watching, the sacrifices you make in silence, and the relentless commitment to growth without broadcasting every step. The world may not notice you now, but it will notice your results later. Most people crave attention while they're still building. They want recognition too early. But the ones who truly win understand that the best work is done in the shadows. You sharpen your skills in private so that when the spotlight eventually hits you, you're already prepared. Quiet work is disciplined work. It's not glamorous. It's not about sharing motivational quotes or posting your progress every day. It's about staying locked in, focusing on the process, and trusting that your effort will eventually echo louder than any words ever could. When you choose quiet work, you eliminate distractions. You stop performing for the world. You stop worrying about what people think of your pace. You move in silence, knowing that consistency compounds. The seeds you plant in private become the forest the world can't ignore. The problem with most people is that they get addicted to being seen. They want credit before the job is done. But quiet workers don't need applause. They don't need validation. They just need the next task, the next rep, the next day, and that mentality makes them unstoppable. Quiet work builds confidence from the inside out. You're not pretending to be disciplined, you are disciplined. You're not faking results for likes, you're building results through effort. That kind of self-assurance can't be bought or faked. It's earned, slowly, in silence. Loud results come from boring consistency. It's the early mornings, the late nights, the cancelled plans, and the focused practice sessions. It's the stuff no one claps for. But over time, those moments stack up and create breakthroughs so big that the world has no choice but to pay attention. Quiet work allows you to fail in private. You can make mistakes without the world watching. You can adjust, refine, and improve without judgment. That freedom to fail without fear makes your learning curve faster, your mindset stronger, and your results sharper. When you're working quietly, you're not worried about timelines. You don't stress over how fast others are moving. You don't compare your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 10. You focus on your own process, knowing that your time will come if you stay consistent. Quiet work removes ego from the equation. You're not doing it for recognition, you're doing it for mastery. You're not chasing followers, you're chasing skills. That shift in motivation is why quiet workers win in the long run. They're not driven by attention, they're driven by excellence. The world is loud, but progress is usually silent. You don't hear a tree growing, but one day it's too tall to ignore. The same goes for quiet work. It happens invisibly, but eventually it becomes undeniable. Your results will speak when it's time. Until then, you stay in the lab. Quiet work protects you from burnout caused by performance anxiety. When you're constantly showing your process, you feel pressure to impress. But when you work in silence, you're free to focus fully on growth, not perception. That freedom makes you more consistent. Every quiet hour you put in builds momentum. You might not see the payoff right away, but it's happening. Day by day, you're becoming someone new. And when you finally reveal the results, people will think it happened overnight, but you'll know it was years in the making. Quiet work helps you ignore opinions. You stop caring about what people say because you're too busy building. You stop defending your choices because your results will do the talking. That level of focus makes you immune to criticism and unstoppable in your mission. When you choose quiet work, you outlast the people who chase attention. They burn out trying to impress others. They quit when no one claps. But you keep going because your why is bigger than applause. You're building for legacy, not likes. Quiet work creates discipline in every area of life. You don't just train when you feel like it. You don't just study when it's convenient. You build habits that run automatically, no matter how you feel. That automatic discipline leads to automatic results. The loudest people often have the least to show. The quiet ones, they're busy working, they're busy refining, they're busy building. And one day, when the results are loud enough, they won't have to say a word, their actions will do all the speaking for them. Quiet work turns you into someone you respect. You stop trying to impress others because you've already impressed yourself. You've kept promises to yourself in the dark. You followed through when no one was looking. That's where real pride comes from. At the end of the day, quiet work is about becoming. You're not trying to prove something, you're trying to build something. And when you do it right, the results are so loud, the world won't remember your silence. They'll only see your mastery. Quiet work teaches you to value process over performance. You no longer chase quick wins or flashy moments. You learn that the real reward is in becoming the type of person who works consistently, whether anyone notices or not. That mindset shift turns you into someone who's immune to distraction. Most people exhaust themselves trying to get credit for things they haven't finished. But when you work quietly, you don't drain your energy explaining your plans. You use that energy to execute. This makes you faster, stronger, and more effective because your attention is fully on the mission. Quiet work also builds humility. You don't develop arrogance when you're building in the shadows. You stay grounded because you know the real battle is internal, not about proving something to the world, but proving to yourself that you can be disciplined day after day. When you work quietly, you build habits that last. You're not motivated by external rewards, so you're not dependent on them. You're doing the work because it aligns with who you are becoming. That's how you build a foundation that won't crumble when life gets hard. Quiet effort rewires your brain for long-term thinking. You stop chasing short-term highs because you're playing the long game. You're not looking for applause this week. You're building a future that will speak for itself in 5 years, 10 years, or a lifetime. When you work in silence, you remove the risk of premature celebration. You don't get caught up in talking about results you haven't earned yet. You stay humble, locked in on the task at hand. And when the real success comes, it feels better because you know you did it the right way. Quiet work lets you fail privately and refine quickly. You don't have to explain every mistake to the world. You adjust silently. You correct your course without making a scene. This gives you the freedom to experiment, learn, and improve at a pace most people never experience. The man who works quietly doesn't need motivation to show up. His discipline is built on purpose, not mood. He doesn't skip days because he's tired. He doesn't delay action because no one's watching. He moves regardless of the weather, the noise, or the distractions. Quiet work protects your momentum from external interference. When you keep your process private, you're less likely to be influenced by opinions, criticism, or doubt. You stay in your lane. You build your momentum brick by brick, knowing that focus is your greatest tool. The real transformation happens when no one's clapping. It happens in the quiet hours, the early mornings, the late nights, the disciplined routines that no one celebrates. But over time, these invisible victories add up and lead to breakthroughs that look impossible from the outside. When you work quietly, you develop an inner scoreboard. You stop measuring your life by public applause and start measuring it by private standards. Did you show up today? Did you push forward? Did you keep the promises you made to yourself? That becomes your metric for success. Quiet work builds mental toughness. It teaches you to push through boredom, fatigue, and doubt without needing a pep talk. You stop negotiating with weakness because you've already trained yourself to do the work, regardless of how you feel. That's real discipline. The loud results that come from quiet work shock people because they didn't see the process. They assume you got lucky or had a shortcut. But you'll know the truth. You stayed in the shadows, grinding quietly, while they wasted time chasing attention. Quiet work creates a calm confidence. You don't have to flex your progress because you're secure in your direction. You're not competing for attention, you're competing with your old self. That internal competition is the only one that matters, and it keeps you sharp. When you work quietly, you respect the grind more. You fall in love with the daily effort, not just the outcomes. The discipline becomes part of who you are. You're not working to arrive, you're working because it's your nature now. That's how mastery is built. Quiet work teaches you delayed gratification. You stop expecting instant results. You understand that consistency beats intensity. You're not trying to blow up overnight. You're trying to build something so solid that it lasts long after the noise fades. There's a certain power in becoming the person who doesn't need to be seen to succeed. You're not posting every step. You're not bragging about your grind. You're building something in silence that will eventually be too big to hide. That's the ultimate flex results, not talk. Quiet work also protects your peace. When you're not broadcasting your journey, you don't invite unnecessary opinions. You stay focused on your craft. You protect your energy by keeping your progress between you and the work. That kind of peace is rare and priceless. In the end, quiet work isn't about hiding, it's about honing. It's about going so deep into your mission that the world doesn't even see you coming. And when you finally emerge, the results are so loud, so undeniable, that no one remembers the silence that built them. Chapter 6. Detach from noise, attach to purpose. The modern world is built on noise. Notifications, opinions, gossip, distractions, they pull at you constantly, trying to hijack your attention. But if you want to build a life of meaning, you have to detach from the noise. You have to unplug from the chaos and plug into something deeper, your purpose. Noise is addictive because it keeps you from thinking. It gives you an escape from the hard questions. Who am I? What am I building? Where am I going? But real growth requires silence. It requires stepping away from the distractions and connecting with why you're really here. When you detach from noise, you stop living in reaction mode. Most people live on autopilot, responding to texts, scrolling for hours, and consuming other people's lives. But you start leading your own life. You stop reacting and start creating. That shift changes everything. Purpose is not found in noise, it's found in reflection. When you get quiet, you remember what matters. You realize that life isn't about impressing strangers or keeping up with trends. It's about aligning your daily actions with your deepest values. That alignment creates power. Attaching to purpose gives your life direction. You're no longer floating, hoping something good happens. You're moving intentionally towards something meaningful. Every day becomes a brick you stack toward a bigger vision. You don't just live, you build. When you focus on purpose, you stop chasing applause. You're not working for attention, you're working for legacy. You don't need the crowd to clap for you because you're clapping for yourself. You know why you're doing the work, and that knowledge keeps you going in silence. Detaching from noise also protects your energy. Not every conversation deserves your attention. Not every opinion needs your response. You learn to conserve your focus for what matters, your mission. You become ruthless about guarding your time and your mind. Most people confuse busyness with purpose. They fill their days with noise and call it productivity. But real purpose is about depth, not speed. It's about doing fewer things with more focus. It's about aligning your actions with your goals, not just staying busy to avoid stillness. Purpose makes you consistent. When you know why you're doing something, you show up even when it's hard. You don't skip days because you're tired. You don't quit when it gets boring. Purpose turns discipline into a lifestyle because you're connected to something bigger than comfort. When you detach from noise, you realize how much of your life was controlled by distraction. You see how many hours you lost scrolling, arguing, or worrying about things that don't matter. But once you see it clearly, you can change it. You can take that time back and use it wisely. Attaching to purpose makes you dangerous to mediocrity. You no longer settle for half effort or half focus. You demand more from yourself because you know where you're going. You stop playing small because you realize small actions won't build the life you want. Detachment from noise is not isolation, it's alignment. You're not running from the world. You're choosing to rise above its chaos. You're choosing silence over distraction, clarity over confusion, and depth over surface-level living. That choice changes who you become. Purpose is the compass that guides your focus. When you're clear on your purpose, you don't get lost in distractions. You know what's a priority and what's not. You cut the excess, simplify your life, and put all your effort into what truly matters. When you live with purpose, you stop chasing trends. You're not trying to be popular, you're trying to be effective. You don't care what's viral today because you're building something that lasts beyond tomorrow. Purpose makes you timeless because it keeps you rooted in values, not fads. Detaching from noise gives you back your mind. You think more clearly. You make decisions based on logic, not impulse. You stop letting fear and comparison guide your actions. You move with strategy, knowing exactly what you need to do and why it matters. Purpose also gives you peace. When you're aligned with your mission, you stop stressing over things that don't serve you. You don't panic when life gets chaotic because you have an internal anchor. You stay calm, focused, and steady because you're locked into your greater goal. When you attach to purpose, you become immune to the crowd's confusion. The world changes its mind every day, but you don't. You know your path. You're not swayed by opinions or trends. You're rooted in something stronger than noise. You're rooted in why you wake up every day. Purpose is the filter you use to decide what matters. If it doesn't align with your mission, you say no. If it doesn't build the life you want, you cut it out. This clarity makes life simpler. You stop wasting time on distractions and start spending time on progress. At the end of the day, the world will always be noisy. There will always be chaos, trends, and distractions trying to pull you away from your mission. But you have a choice. Stay lost in the noise or detach from it. Attach to purpose, and you'll build a life that silence can't shake and noise can't control. Detaching from noise is an act of rebellion in a distracted world. Most people are slaves to their devices, constantly reacting to whatever pops up next. But when you unplug from the noise, you reclaim control over your mind. You stop letting life happen to you and start creating life on your terms. Purpose gives you the stamina to stay focused when others give up. Distractions feel good in the moment, but rob you of long-term satisfaction. Purpose, on the other hand, fuels delayed gratification. It teaches you to work in silence now, so you can enjoy the results later. When you detach from noise, you find time for reflection. You start asking yourself the hard questions that noisy lives avoid. Are you happy with the life you're building? Are your habits aligned with your vision? These questions hurt at first, but they create clarity that changes everything. Purpose brings structure to your life. When you know what matters, your schedule changes. You stop waking up in reaction mode and start waking up with intention. You prioritize learning, discipline, and progress instead of wasting hours chasing meaningless distractions. The more you detach from noise, the stronger your focus becomes. Your mind stops jumping from one thing to the next. You learn to sit with tasks longer, think deeper, and push through boredom. This mental endurance is rare in a distracted world, and it's exactly why you win. Attaching to purpose turns discipline into a habit, not a struggle. You no longer rely on motivation because you've built a system around what matters. Your actions aren't emotional, they're strategic. You move with consistency, knowing exactly why you're doing what you do. When you detach from the noise, you find out who you really are. You're no longer defined by what the world tells you to be. You stop measuring your worth by likes, followers, or applause. You measure your worth by how close you are to becoming the person you were meant to be. Noise confuses you, purpose clarifies you. When you're lost in distractions, you chase random goals that don't align with your core values. But when you focus on purpose, you align your life around one mission. That alignment makes you faster, smarter, and more fulfilled. Detachment doesn't mean you stop engaging with the world, it means you engage intentionally. You choose when to connect and when to disconnect. You control your inputs instead of letting the world flood you with meaningless information that drains your mind. When you live in purpose, you operate from a different level of awareness. You notice when you're slipping. You catch yourself when distractions creep in. Purpose gives you an internal compass that redirects you back to your mission before you drift too far. Noise is often a cover for fear. People distract themselves because they're scared of stillness. But when you detach from the noise, you face your fears head-on. You deal with the discomfort of growth instead of numbing it. That's how you build real inner strength. Attaching to purpose helps you make better decisions. You don't say yes to everything because you understand the cost of distraction. You evaluate each opportunity by asking, does this move me closer to my mission? If the answer is no, you walk away without guilt. When you detach from the world's noise, you stop living for the short term. You stop chasing things that only matter for a moment and start building things that matter forever. Legacy becomes your goal, not popularity. Impact becomes your aim, not attention. Purpose helps you navigate setbacks with resilience. When distractions hit, most people quit. But when you're driven by purpose, you keep going. You don't fold under pressure because you know exactly why you started. That deeper reason becomes your fuel. Detaching from noise also improves your relationships. You stop wasting time on shallow connections. You invest in people who support your growth and respect your silence. You build relationships around shared purpose, not shared distraction. When you operate in purpose, you become less reactive. You don't get pulled into drama or meaningless debates. You're too focused on building. You're too committed to your mission to waste time arguing with people who don't understand your path. Noise numbs your senses, purpose sharpens them. You become more present in your work, in your growth, and in your life. You notice details you used to miss because you're no longer mentally scattered. Focused attention creates deeper learning and faster mastery. Attaching to purpose increases your self-respect. You stop betraying yourself with laziness and distraction. You follow through on what you said you'd do. Each day of purpose-driven action reinforces your identity as someone who keeps their word to themselves. At the highest level, purpose gives you peace. You stop worrying about how you're perceived because you know why you're here. You move quietly, work steadily, and grow patiently. That kind of peace is rare, and it's the reward for choosing purpose over noise. Chapter 7. Reinvent yourself without announcement. Reinvention is not something you broadcast, it's something you do in silence. The most powerful transformations happen behind the scenes, not in the spotlight. When you decide to reinvent yourself, you don't owe the world an explanation. You owe yourself discipline, patience, and relentless commitment to change. Most people announce their goals before they've even started. They post about new habits, new plans, new visions. But talking about change is not the same as becoming new. Real reinvention happens quietly. It happens when you stop explaining and start executing without fanfare. When you reinvent yourself in silence, you remove the pressure to perform for others. You don't have to worry about proving anything to anyone. You focus all your energy on the work. That work is done privately, where no one claps and no one criticizes. It's just you versus the old you. Silent reinvention builds internal momentum. You're not distracted by outside opinions or waiting for validation. You move in private, stacking small wins daily, until the shift becomes irreversible. By the time people notice, the transformation is already done. Quiet change protects you from outside sabotage. Not everyone wants you to grow. Some people prefer you stuck in your old patterns because it makes them comfortable. But when you grow in silence, you protect your process from unnecessary interference and negative energy. When you reinvent yourself without announcement, you give yourself room to fail and adjust. Transformation isn't linear. There will be mistakes. But in silence, you have the freedom to correct without judgment. You refine in private, so when you emerge, you're sharper and more prepared. Reinvention requires shedding old layers. This process is personal, sometimes painful, and often misunderstood by others. That's why it's best done quietly. You don't have to explain why you're letting go of certain habits, people, or environments. You just do it for you. Silence gives you space to experiment. You can try new methods, develop new disciplines, and test new mindsets without an audience. This makes your growth authentic. It's not performative, it's real. You're changing because you need to, not because you want applause. Reinvention without announcement prevents premature celebration. You're not congratulating yourself for intentions, you're waiting for real results. This keeps you humble, grounded, and focused on the process instead of getting lost in fantasy achievements. When you change quietly, you surprise the world. One day, you reappear, stronger, calmer, sharper, and people won't know what happened. But you'll know. You disappeared to rebuild. You did the work while no one was watching. That's why your new level feels earned, not given. Silent reinvention also strengthens your resilience. When no one knows what you're working on, no one can discourage you. You don't have to defend your vision or explain your changes. You keep your head down, endure the hard parts, and keep going until the new you is undeniable. Transformation in silence builds character. It teaches you patience, consistency, and humility. You stop chasing quick fixes and start committing to long-term growth. You stop needing instant results because you're focused on becoming, not impressing. Reinvention means letting the old version of you die. That death is often silent. There's no parade for leaving behind weakness, procrastination, or fear. But in that quiet burial, you create room for the new version of you to rise own choice, one day, one habit at a time. When you reinvent yourself without announcement, you stay aligned with purpose, not ego. You're not changing to prove something. You're changing because you've outgrown the old you. Your goals have evolved. Your mindset has matured, and now your actions must match. The silent process of reinvention also helps you detach from external timelines. You stop worrying about how fast others are moving. You stop comparing your chapter to someone else's. You move at your own pace, knowing that slow, steady growth beats rushed, shallow change. Quiet reinvention means you stop explaining your silence. You stop apologizing for distance. You stop defending your need for solitude. You simply work. You simply build. And when you return, the results will do all the talking you chose not to do. When you reinvent yourself privately, you control the narrative. People don't see your struggle, they only see your outcome. You don't give them room to doubt your process because they don't witness the messy middle. They just witness the final product, a new you. The world loves overnight success stories, but those stories are a myth. Real reinvention is slow, silent, and often unseen. It's the early mornings, the late nights, and the quiet days when no one notices your effort. But those days are where the real change is built. In the end, reinvention is not about proving people wrong, it's about proving yourself right. It's about becoming the person you've always known you could be. And when you do that quietly, without applause, you come back unrecognizable in the best way possible. Quiet reinvention teaches you the difference between evolution and exhibition. Most people change for attention. They want the world to notice every small adjustment. But real transformation doesn't need an audience. It's an internal shift, not an external show. When you reinvent yourself privately, you conserve energy. You're not explaining your every move or defending your decisions. You don't waste time trying to be understood by people who aren't on your path. You keep all your energy directed toward growth, not conversation. Reinvention is not just about adding new skill sets, about removing what no longer serves you. The bad habits, the weak thoughts, the toxic environments, they all have to go. This shedding process is best done in silence because it's deeply personal and rarely pretty. When you commit to change without making noise, you learn how to be patient with yourself. Transformation isn't instant. It takes time to build new habits, develop discipline, and think differently. But in silence, you give yourself room to evolve without rushing. Quiet reinvention also protects your self-esteem. When you announce changes too soon, you invite opinions that can shake your confidence. But when you move in silence, you avoid unnecessary feedback. You keep your growth between you and your goals until you're ready to reveal it. Reinventing yourself without announcement teaches you to fall in love with solitude. You spend time alone, not to isolate yourself from the world, but to reconnect with who you really are. In that silence, you find clarity about the person you're becoming. Working on yourself quietly builds emotional resilience. You stop relying on applause or support to keep going. You find internal motivation that isn't tied to anyone else's recognition. That self-sufficiency becomes your greatest weapon against quitting. Reinvention requires consistency, not ceremony. No one sees the early mornings you push through when you'd rather sleep. No one witnesses the tough decisions you make to stay disciplined. But those unseen moments are where the new you is built. When you reinvent yourself privately, you learn how to handle setbacks without breaking. Failure becomes part of the process, not something to fear. You don't need to explain your mistakes to anyone. You just learn, adjust, and keep moving. The silent path of reinvention gives you time to master your craft. You can study, train, and improve without distraction. There's no pressure to perform because no one is watching. You're free to focus on getting better instead of getting attention. Quiet change is lasting change. When you build in silence, you're not motivated by quick praise, you're motivated by long-term transformation. That's why your new habits stick. You're not doing them for the crowd. You're doing them because they align with the person you've decided to become. Reinvention without announcement teaches you how to prioritize. You realize you can't do everything at once, so you focus on the most important changes first. You master one discipline, then another, stacking small wins until they turn into massive transformation. When you move silently, you remove the fear of judgment. People can't criticize what they don't know about. This gives you freedom to try, fail, and adjust without the weight of other people's expectations on your back. Reinventing yourself without telling the world creates a sense of peace. You're not performing life for an audience, you're living it for yourself. You stop playing a character and start becoming the real version of who you were always meant to be. The process of quiet change also deepens your focus. There's no need to divide your attention between growth and storytelling. You don't have to pause to share updates. You just work, reflect, and continue. That uninterrupted flow leads to faster, deeper results. Silently reinventing yourself changes how you view time. You stop rushing. You understand that transformation is a long game. You're not trying to flip your life overnight. You're committed to becoming better day by day, knowing the results will reveal themselves when the time is right. When you reinvent yourself quietly, you gain control over your identity. No one can label you because they don't know what you're building. You get to define who you are without outside interference. You design your life on your terms, in your own time. Quiet reinvention also teaches you discipline over desire. You stop chasing emotional highs from public validation. You focus on delayed gratification, knowing that the real reward is becoming someone who doesn't need constant approval to stay committed. In silence, you develop mental toughness. You build the ability to keep moving when it's hard, when it's lonely, and when it's uncomfortable. This mental grit becomes the foundation of the new you. It's not for show, it's for survival and success. At the end of this process, you won't need to announce your reinvention. The way you carry yourself, the way you think, and the results you produce will speak louder than any words. Quiet transformation always leads to loud outcomes when the time is right. Chapter 8. Suffering in silence, sharpening the mind. Suffering in silence is not weakness, it's training. It's where you develop the kind of mental strength that can't be taught in comfort. When you suffer quietly, you learn how to carry weight without breaking, how to endure hardship without asking for sympathy. That solitude forges sharpness. Most people run from silent suffering because it feels lonely. But isolation during hard times is where the mind becomes powerful. It's where you learn how to think clearly under pressure. Pain becomes a teacher, and the lessons you gain in silence last longer than any temporary comfort. When you suffer in silence, you stop expecting the world to rescue you. You realize no one is coming to save you, and that realization forces you to become your own solution. This mindset is not cruel, it's empowering. It gives you ownership of your growth. Enduring silent suffering trains you to stay calm under chaos. While others panic, you stay steady because you've already faced your private battles. You've learned how to navigate inner storms without falling apart, and that inner mastery becomes a tool you carry everywhere. Suffering in silence teaches you patience. Growth rarely happens as fast as you want it to. But when you suffer without complaining, you build the ability to endure discomfort without quitting. That patience sharpens your perspective and extends your endurance. Pain in private builds emotional control. You stop reacting emotionally to every hardship because you've trained yourself to observe your suffering instead of drowning in it. You analyze your pain, understand its purpose, and use it as fuel to keep moving forward. The silent seasons of suffering are often the most productive for the mind. Without distractions, you're forced to reflect. You confront your weaknesses, you study your habits. You learn how to think deeper and move smarter. That reflection leads to mental clarity. Suffering in silence removes the need for validation. You stop posting every struggle for sympathy. You don't need the world to know you're hurting. You simply endure, adapt, and grow stronger in the shadows. That resilience makes you different from the average person. When you carry pain quietly, you become more self-reliant. You don't crumble when things get hard because you've trained for this. You know how to handle difficulty without folding. That strength becomes part of your identity, quiet, but unbreakable. Silent suffering teaches you how to separate emotion from execution. You might feel pain, but you still take action, you still show up, you still do the work. That discipline sharpens your mind, teaching you that feelings are temporary, but progress is forever. In suffering, you learn to respect discomfort. You no longer see pain as an enemy. You understand it's part of the process. Growth demands sacrifice, and silent suffering is how you pay the price without complaint. That payment is what sharpens your mental edge. When you suffer quietly, you gain perspective. You realize how small problems really are compared to the storms you've weathered. Petty drama no longer distracts you. You become focused on the mission because you've learned that survival requires clarity, not chaos. Suffering in silence also humbles you. You stop thinking you're invincible. You understand that pain is part of life, and no one escapes it. But you also realize you don't have to broadcast your struggles. You deal with them privately and rise quietly, stronger than before. The mind grows sharper when it has to solve problems alone. In silence, you have no choice but to think. You analyze your failures, strategize your next moves, and develop mental tools for the future. That kind of thinking creates a level of wisdom that comfort never could. Silent suffering teaches you how to embrace solitude without feeling sorry for yourself. You stop seeing isolation as punishment and start seeing it as preparation. It's in those moments of quiet pain that you find out who you really are and who you can become. When you learn to suffer in silence, you stop fearing failure. You've already faced pain, so setbacks no longer scare you. You know you can endure. You know you'll survive the hard days because you've done it before. That makes you fearless in the face of new challenges. The mind becomes sharper when it's forced to focus during discomfort. You learn how to concentrate through the chaos, how to stay locked in when most people would quit. That focus becomes part of you. It's forged in the quiet moments of endurance. Suffering in silence also teaches you gratitude. You stop taking easy days for granted because you know what hard days feel like. This perspective shift keeps you grounded. You appreciate progress more because you've paid for it in silence. Pain, when processed properly, becomes power. When you suffer quietly, you don't let pain weaken you, you let it sculpt you. It cuts away the laziness, the excuses, the fear. What's left is a sharper, stronger version of you who can handle life without crumbling. At the end of silent suffering, you don't emerge the same. You come back calmer, wiser, and harder to shake. The struggles no one saw became the sharpening stone for your mind. And now, you carry a strength that can't be faked because it was earned alone. Silent suffering creates a level of emotional discipline that most people never reach. When you hurt but choose to keep going without complaining, you teach your mind to stay focused even under pressure. This control over your emotions becomes a secret weapon, giving you the power to stay balanced when life shakes. The mind becomes resilient when you sit with discomfort instead of running from it. Most people try to numb their pain through distractions, but you choose to face it. By confronting suffering directly, you develop the mental stamina to handle life's hardest challenges without folding. Pain sharpens your thinking by forcing you to question everything. You stop living on autopilot and start asking real questions about who you are and what you're building. Pain strips away the unnecessary, leaving you with clarity. In that clarity, You find out exactly where you need to improve. When you suffer in silence, you stop being reactive. You learn how to observe your pain instead of letting it control you. This detachment from immediate reaction gives you space to choose your response. That choice is where power lives, responding with wisdom instead of reacting with emotion. Silent suffering helps you master solitude. You become comfortable with being alone because you realize growth happens in private battles. While others need constant distraction to avoid themselves, you sit quietly, learning from your pain and becoming stronger in the process. Suffering in silence changes your relationship with time. You stop expecting quick results and start respecting the slow grind. You realize that real transformation doesn't happen in weeks, it happens over months and years of consistent effort, often when no one is watching. The process of suffering quietly humbles your ego. You no longer think you're immune to life's difficulties. But that humility makes you stronger because you accept the truth. Pain is part of the journey. You stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "What now?" In silence, you learn to find lessons in pain instead of reasons to quit. Every hardship becomes a teaching moment. You analyze your mistakes, your weaknesses, and your reactions. Over time, this reflection makes you smarter, sharper, and better prepared for future battles. Silent suffering gives you a deeper sense of purpose. You realize that pain is not pointless, it's preparation. It's shaping you into someone who can handle more, lead better, and withstand bigger storms. You no longer resent the struggle, you respect it. When you choose to suffer quietly, you stop broadcasting your setbacks. You don't announce every failure or cry for attention. Instead, you quietly correct course. You make adjustments in private, knowing that your rebound will be louder than any excuse you could offer. The mind becomes unshakable when it learns how to endure pain without shutting down. You develop the ability to think clearly during chaos, to make decisions while hurting, and to keep building when others would collapse. This level of mental control is rare and earned in silence. Suffering in silence teaches you how to lead yourself. You stop waiting for someone to guide you or tell you what to do. You become your own coach, your own motivator, your own disciplinarian. That self-leadership makes you independent, focused, and unstoppable. Private pain builds integrity. You don't cut corners or take the easy way out just to avoid discomfort. You hold yourself to high standards even when no one is checking. This creates a mindset of excellence that carries over into everything you do. When you suffer without complaining, you inspire quietly. You show others what it looks like to endure without seeking pity. You become an example of strength, not through loud words, but through silent consistency. People notice, even if you never say a word. Silent suffering sharpens your intuition. You learn to trust your gut because you've spent time in solitude listening to yourself. You don't need a committee to validate your decisions. You know what's right for you because you've spent time studying your own mind in the dark. Pain helps you recalibrate your values. When life gets hard, you realize what really matters. You stop chasing shallow goals and start focusing on what's meaningful. This shift creates alignment between your actions and your purpose, making you more powerful and more peaceful. Suffering in silence teaches you emotional detachment from outcomes. You realize you can't control everything, but you can control your effort. You stop obsessing over results and start focusing on the process. This mindset keeps you steady when life doesn't go as planned. The lessons you learn during silent suffering stick longer than the lessons you learn in comfort. Pain imprints wisdom deeper into the mind because it demands attention. You remember what you learned in the dark because you had no choice but to face the truth. Silent suffering also builds gratitude for simple things. After carrying heavy burdens alone, you appreciate peace, health, and clarity more. You stop taking the basics for granted. This gratitude keeps you grounded and reminds you to respect the life you're building. At the end of the silent struggle, you don't come out the same. You come out refined, not broken. Your mind is sharper, your spirit is stronger, and your heart is calmer. Suffering in silence became the forge that shaped you, and now no one can take that strength away from you. Chapter 9. Rebuild your confidence in the dark. Confidence isn't rebuilt in the spotlight, it's rebuilt in the dark, when no one is watching. When you've fallen, when you've failed, when you've been humbled by life, your mind becomes fragile. But the only way to restore that belief in yourself is to work silently, stacking quiet wins until strength returns. The dark is where you reset. You step away from the crowd, away from the noise, and confront the parts of you that broke. Maybe you lost faith in yourself after mistakes. Maybe life knocked you down. But confidence isn't something you talk about. It's something you earn back through private discipline. Confidence dies when you stop keeping promises to yourself. So, in the dark, you start small again. You set goals, no matter how minor, and you meet them. Wake up early. Train when you said you would. Study when you don't feel like it. Each follow-through adds a layer to your confidence. In silence, you build self-respect. You no longer need external validation because you're watching yourself grow. You witness your own effort, your own sacrifice, and your own persistence. And slowly, day by day, you start believing in your capabilities, again not because someone said you're worthy, but because you know you've earned it. Rebuilding confidence in the dark is not about faking positivity, it's about facing reality. You don't deny the pain, you work through it. You don't pretend you're fine, you become fine by doing the hard, quiet work that no one sees but you. That's where real self-belief grows. In the shadows, you get honest with yourself. You admit where you slipped. You take accountability for the gaps in your discipline. But instead of beating yourself up, you start fixing them, quietly, consistently. No announcements, just steady repair work. The dark season is a gift because it removes the pressure to perform. You're not proving anything to anyone. You're focused solely on becoming better. You can fail privately, adjust quietly, and improve without an audience critiquing every move. That freedom speeds up growth. Confidence comes back when you shift from talk to action. You don't post about your comeback, you make one. You don't seek reassurance, you seek results. Each silent rep, each disciplined day, each moment of resistance builds a version of you who trusts himself again. When you rebuild confidence in the dark, you train your mind to appreciate process over praise. You stop chasing recognition. You start chasing improvement. You fall in love with the grind because it becomes the source of your new foundation, not attention, but action. Self-belief is fragile after failure, but the dark gives you space to heal without external pressure. You rebuild quietly, knowing that once you return to the light, you won't need to convince anyone of your worth. Your actions will speak for you, loudly and clearly. Confidence isn't ego's evidence, and when you work in the dark, you're gathering proof of your own discipline. Every time you show up for yourself, you're collecting data that says, "I'm capable." That evidence stacks until you can't deny it anymore. In private, you remove comparison from the equation. You're not looking at other people's journeys, you're focused on your own. That singular focus accelerates your growth. You stop measuring yourself against others and start measuring yourself against who you were yesterday. The dark teaches you patience. Confidence doesn't come back overnight. It's rebuilt slowly, through repetitions of discipline. Some days you'll feel doubt creeping in, but you keep going anyway. And eventually, those small acts of persistence hardwire belief back into your mind. When you work on yourself in silence, You eliminate the risk of relapse into old patterns driven by ego. You're not chasing quick fixes. You're not performing for approval. You're rebuilding a life of integrity, one decision at a time, away from the temptation to cut corners. Confidence in the dark comes from doing the uncomfortable things. You train when no one asks you to. You push when no one's watching. You face the mirror and confront the weaknesses that once broke you. And by facing them, you turn them into strengths. The dark season allows you to rebuild your mental toughness. Life will hit you again, it's inevitable. But this time, you'll be ready because you've learned how to stand back up in silence. You've practiced resilience without needing applause. That kind of confidence is permanent. When you rebuild in silence, you also learn to forgive yourself. You stop carrying the shame of past failures. You recognize that mistakes don't define you. What defines you is your commitment to keep growing, no matter how long it takes, no matter how quiet the journey is. Working in the dark shifts your focus from outcome to identity. You stop saying, "I need to win so I'll feel good." And you start saying, "I'll become someone who wins because I work consistently." That identity shift rebuilds confidence from the inside out. Eventually, the dark won't feel like punishment anymore. It'll feel like preparation. You'll realize that the quiet season is where warriors are made. It's where leaders are formed. It's where you become someone who no longer doubts himself because you've done the work that removes all doubt. When you finally come out of the dark, you'll look in the mirror and see someone new, not because life got easier, but because you got stronger. And you'll know deep down that the version of you who rebuilt his confidence in silence is the most unstoppable version yet. Confidence built in the dark is rooted in actions, not affirmations. You don't just tell yourself you're strong, you prove it by pushing through when no one sees. This kind of proof is undeniable because it's not based on motivation. It's based on consistent effort, day after day. In the silence of rebuilding, you learn the value of starting over. Sometimes confidence is lost because you tied it to an old version of yourself. But starting from zero teaches you humility. It forces you to focus on progress, not perfection. And that focus is what rebuilds belief. The dark is where you rewire your thinking. You stop saying, "I hope I get better," and start saying, "I will get better because I'm doing the work." This mental shift removes doubt. It replaces fear with discipline and excuses with daily actions that restore inner strength. Rebuilding confidence privately teaches you to find motivation from within. You no longer rely on external praise to keep going. You keep going because you've made a decision to evolve. That internal drive becomes permanent because it's not based on emotion, it's based on purpose. In the dark, you don't chase confidence, you build competence. You focus on becoming good at what you do. And as you develop skills, habits, and mastery, your confidence rises naturally. You trust yourself because you've done the reps, not because you've convinced yourself with empty words. Working quietly gives you space to fail without shame. You're not broadcasting your setbacks to the world. You fall, learn, and adjust without needing to explain yourself. This private learning curve accelerates growth and makes your rebound faster and more sustainable. Confidence is rebuilt through repetition, not resolution. It's not about deciding to be confident, it's about showing up repeatedly until your mind accepts that you're consistent. Consistency becomes identity. And when you become someone who never quits, confidence follows naturally. The quiet grind teaches you how to honor the process. You stop looking for shortcuts because you know the long road is the real road. You embrace the hard days because they're shaping you into someone you can respect. Confidence comes from knowing you earned it the hard way. In the dark, you learn to focus on what you can control. You stop obsessing over outcomes you can't predict and start obsessing over your daily habits. You control your mornings, your mindset, your discipline, and that control rebuilds confidence from the ground up. Rebuilding quietly teaches you how to silence the inner critic. Instead of arguing with self-doubt, you outwork it. You let your actions speak louder than your fears. Over time, the critic in your mind has nothing left to say because your consistent effort drowns it out. Confidence comes back when you reconnect with discipline. Discipline is what anchors you when motivation fades. It's what keeps you moving through dark seasons, knowing that consistency will eventually pull you out of the storm and into the light. In the shadows, you learn how to become your own motivator. You don't wait for someone to push you, you push yourself. That internal pressure to improve becomes your superpower. It makes you independent and capable of facing life without leaning on outside voices. Private growth creates peace of mind. You know you're becoming better, even if no one else knows it yet. That secret progress gives you quiet confidence, the kind that doesn't need to be announced because it's solid, rooted, and undeniable to you. When you rebuild in the dark, you stop fearing setbacks. You understand they're part of the path. You embrace failure as feedback, not as a final verdict. This mindset removes the fear of trying because you're no longer tied to perfection, you're tied to persistence. Quiet progress sharpens your identity. You no longer see yourself as someone who's stuck or broken. You see yourself as a builder, a grinder, a person who gets back up no matter how many times life knocks you down. That identity shift becomes permanent because you earned it. Rebuilding confidence away from the spotlight teaches you to trust time. You stop rushing the process. You know that real change takes longer than people think. But because you're not performing for anyone, you can move at your own pace, slow, steady, and unstoppable. When you rebuild in private, you create stronger mental habits. You stop giving energy to negative thoughts. You redirect your focus to your next step, your next rep, your next move. This mental redirection becomes automatic over time, leading to sharper thinking and faster recovery from doubt. Confidence in the dark also teaches you how to simplify life. You stop complicating your growth with unnecessary distractions. You strip it down to the basics: work, rest, reflect, repeat. That simplicity removes overwhelm and allows you to stay focused on what truly matters. As you build quietly, you stop worrying about what other people think of your process. You realize that most people are too distracted with their own lives to notice your journey. That freedom removes performance anxiety and lets you focus fully on becoming your best self. At the end of the silent rebuilding phase, you emerge with a new kind of confidence, one that doesn't waver when life gets hard. It's not built on hype. It's not built on other people's opinions. It's built on private effort, private victories, and the quiet strength of knowing you didn't give up. Chapter 10. The Art of Becoming Unrecognizable. Becoming unrecognizable is not about changing your facets, about changing your mindset, your habits, and your entire way of life so deeply that the old version of you no longer exists. It's about evolving so quietly and so completely that when you return, people don't understand how you did it. Most people change in small ways. They tweak habits but stay mostly the same. But becoming unrecognizable requires transformation on every level. You rebuild your mind, reshape your routines, and redefine your limits until you outgrow your past completely. To become unrecognizable, you must first detach from the old you. You stop identifying with your previous failures, mistakes, or weaknesses. You let go of the stories you told yourself about why you can't change. That old narrative dies, so a new version of you can take over. This transformation is not loud. You don't announce it. You don't warn the world. You work in silence, changing day by day, until the person you were no longer fits into the life you're building. The gap becomes so wide that even you are shocked at the difference. Becoming unrecognizable means you don't return to old habits just because they're familiar. Comfort zones are traps. You destroy them. You build new patterns, new disciplines, and new standards that make the old you impossible to resurrect. That's how you make the change permanent. Transformation requires sacrifice. You give up temporary pleasure for long-term evolution. You sacrifice distractions for focus, comfort for growth, and excuses for accountability. These sacrifices are why the new you won't look anything like the old you. When you're becoming unrecognizable, you don't seek approval. Most people fear change because they don't want to outgrow their circle. But you embrace it. You understand that growth requires leaving people behind if they won't grow with you. It's part of the process. The art of becoming unrecognizable is rooted in daily action. You don't skip steps. You don't look for shortcuts. You wake up, do the work, and repeat. Over time, the compound effect of these actions changes your entire identity mentally, emotionally, and physically. People will notice the shift, but they won't understand the cost. They'll see your discipline but won't see the lonely nights you spent rebuilding yourself. They'll notice your confidence but won't realize it came from consistent effort in silence. That's why the transformation feels so dramatic. When you become unrecognizable, your standards elevate automatically. You no longer tolerate mediocrity, not in your habits, not in your circle, not in your mindset. You expect more from yourself because you've proven you're capable of more. Transformation also changes your energy. You don't have to tell people you've grown, they feel it. You carry a calm power, a silent intensity that comes from knowing you rebuilt yourself from nothing. That energy is what sets you apart from the old you. Becoming unrecognizable is about becoming your own version too. It's not a minor update. It's a complete upgrade. You change how you think, how you act, how you react, and how you show up in the world. You don't tweak, you transform. This process requires patience. You don't become unrecognizable overnight. It takes weeks, months, sometimes years of consistent work. But the longer you stay focused, the wider the gap becomes between who you were and who you've become. In the beginning, people might mock your growth. They won't understand why you're disappearing, why you're focused, why you're changing. But once the results show up, they'll be forced to respect it even if they don't say it out loud. Becoming unrecognizable also means mastering silence. You don't explain every move. You don't justify your distance. You don't share every detail of your journey. You move in private, knowing that real change doesn't need an audience, it just needs execution. This transformation rewrites your inner dialogue. The weak voice that used to control you gets replaced with a stronger one. You stop doubting yourself. You stop negotiating with laziness. You become the type of person who expects discipline, not excuses. Your habits become the proof of your transformation. The old you procrastinated, the new you executes. The old you made excuses, the new you finds solutions. The old you hesitated, the new you moves without overthinking. These shifts are what make you unrecognizable. When you become unrecognizable, you also become untouchable to old triggers. Things that used to distract or derail you no longer have power. You've upgraded your operating system. Your mind is sharper. Your reactions are calmer. Your focus is laser-tight. At the end of this journey, you don't even recognize the old you. You remember him, but you don't miss him. You're too busy building the next version of yourself. And the best part is, you're not done yet. Transformation is now your lifestyle, not your phase. Becoming unrecognizable is not about showing off your transformation. It's about becoming so different that showing off isn't necessary. Your life speaks louder than your words. People don't need an explanation when your results are visible in how you move, think, and live. The journey to becoming unrecognizable begins with brutal honesty. You look at who you were without sugarcoating the truth. You admit the laziness, the weakness, the excuses. But instead of staying stuck there, you choose to rise. That decision is where real transformation starts. Change on this level requires solitude. You can't grow into a new version of yourself while constantly explaining your steps to others. You need time away from opinions, distractions, and expectations. In that isolation, you find the raw materials to rebuild yourself. Becoming unrecognizable is about creating new mental pathways. The old thought patterns that kept you small must be destroyed. You replace doubt with determination. You swap fear for action. You stop asking for permission to grow and start giving yourself orders. As you transform, your environment starts to change too. You naturally outgrow old conversations, old habits, and sometimes old relationships. Not because you're better than anyone, but because you've raised your standards. Your new life won't accept your old patterns. Every day becomes an opportunity to reinforce your transformation. You wake up and ask, "Who am I becoming today?" You stay conscious of your evolution, making small but consistent choices that, over time, build a completely different version of you. The art of becoming unrecognizable requires mastering discomfort. Growth hurts. It forces you to break routines, face fears, and step into unfamiliar territory. But you stop running from discomfort because you know it's the forge where the new you is molded. When you become unrecognizable, you no longer seek permission to change. You no longer wait for someone to validate your growth. You move forward because you've decided to, not because someone said you could. That independence is the foundation of real power. Transformation this deep redefines your relationship with failure. You stop fearing it because you understand it's part of the process. Mistakes don't shake your identity anymore, they sharpen it. Each setback becomes a stepping stone toward mastery. As you change, you build invisible armor. Words that used to break you no longer land. Opinions that once bothered you now bounce off. This emotional resilience is a byproduct of becoming unrecognizable. You're not who you used to be, so the same things don't affect you. Becoming unrecognizable also means outworking the person you were yesterday. You compete with your old self, not with other people. Each day is a chance to push the boundary further, to do more, think deeper, and operate on a higher level than you did before. You develop a new kind of humility when you transform this deeply. You realize the process is never really done. There's always another level to reach, another weakness to correct, another strength to build. This mindset keeps you growing long after others have plateaued. The change is holistic. It's not just about mindset, it's about how you carry yourself, how you speak, how you interact with the world. People sense the shift even before they understand it. Your energy speaks louder than any announcement ever could. Becoming unrecognizable also means becoming unpredictable. The old you was predictable, stuck in patterns, habits, and routines that everyone saw coming. But the new you moves differently. You're strategic, disciplined, and intentional. No one knows your next move. This transformation makes you more intentional with your time. You stop wasting hours on things that don't matter. Your calendar reflects your priorities. Every minute is accounted for because you're building something too important to leave to chance. As you evolve, you realize that confidence comes from proof, not promises. You don't need to tell people you've changed, they see it. You don't need to convince yourself you're different. You feel it in your actions, your decisions, and your new levels of discipline. Becoming unrecognizable also changes your relationship with success. You're no longer chasing quick wins or surface-level achievements. You're building long-term growth, deep fulfillment, and quiet mastery. You're not in it for attention, you're in it for transformation. People will wonder how you did it, but most won't understand the price. They won't see the nights you stayed in while others partied. They won't witness the early mornings, the sacrifices, or the quiet discipline. But that's fine, you didn't do it for them. In the end, becoming unrecognizable is about becoming undeniable. Your work ethic, your discipline, and your transformation are so clear that no one can question it. The old you is gone. The new you is here and you're just getting started. Chapter 11. Re-emerge with power, not permission. When you've rebuilt yourself in silence, the next step is to re-emerge, but not as the same person who left. You come back sharper, calmer, and stronger, and you don't ask for permission to take up space. You don't wait for someone to validate your return. You return because you've earned it. Re-emerging with power means you no longer seek approval for your moves. You move because you're ready. The work is done. The preparation is complete. You're not looking for applause, you're focused on execution. The new you doesn't ask, "Is it okay if I grow?" The new you simply grows. Most people return from setbacks timid, hoping the world accepts them again. But you've spent your silent season becoming dangerous not in aggression, but in mastery. You've developed skills, discipline, and clarity that no one can deny. So when you re-emerge, you do it boldly. Re-emerging with power means you've redefined your relationship with confidence. You no longer fake it. You've built it through consistent work. There's no more pretending. You know who you are because you've earned every piece of this new version of yourself. You no longer dim your light to make others comfortable. When you return from isolation, you stand tall. You don't minimize your progress for the sake of fitting in. You don't shrink yourself because others stayed the same. You walk into the room fully aware of the power you now carry. Re-emergence is not about announcing your return, it's about letting your actions speak. You're not making speeches about how you've changed. You're demonstrating it. Your discipline, your focus, and your results are all the introduction you need. Coming back with power means you no longer play by the rules that kept you small. The old you followed guidelines set by other people. The new you creates your own standards. You lead yourself now. You decide what success looks like, and you pursue it relentlessly. You no longer fear judgment when you re-emerge. You understand that not everyone will accept the new you. That's fine. Growth isn't about pleasing people, it's about fulfilling potential. You're not here to be liked. You're here to become everything you're capable of becoming. Re-emerging with power is about setting boundaries. You don't return to old environments with the same openness. You protect your energy. You guard your mind. You choose who has access to you carefully because you know how valuable your focus is now. This version of you moves differently. You're not reactive, you're strategic. You don't let emotions control your actions. You don't get pulled into petty distractions. You're locked in on your mission, and nothing shakes you because you've built this power in silence. When you return, you no longer need to explain why you disappeared. The results will explain for you. The difference in your mindset, your habits, and your energy will say everything. People will notice the shift without you needing to speak about it. Re-emerging means leading by example. You don't preach discipline, you live it. You don't talk about consistency, you show it. You become a mirror that reflects what is possible when someone commits fully to their growth without excuses. The new you no longer fears being misunderstood. You know that some people won't get it, and that's okay. You're not returning for their approval, you're returning for your mission. Your life has a purpose now that's bigger than pleasing anyone. When you re-enter the world, you don't force your way in, you let your presence speak for itself. Quiet confidence carries more power than loud arrogance. You don't need to prove anything. You simply operate at a higher level, and that alone changes the atmosphere around you. Re-emerging with power means moving in alignment with your values. You don't compromise for convenience. You don't lower your standards to make life easier. You stay disciplined because you've learned that discipline is freedom. It keeps you sharp, focused, and in control. You no longer waste time defending your transformation. You don't argue with people who question your new path. You've built too much to be dragged back into old debates. Your energy is reserved for execution, not explanation. Re-emergence is about owning your new identity fully. You don't play small to make others feel big. You don't pretend you're still the same to make people comfortable. You embrace the gap between who you were and who you've become, and you keep pushing that gap wider. When you come back, you take control of your life with precision. You have goals, systems, and strategies that drive you forward. You're not winging it anymore. You've built a plan, and you execute it daily without hesitation. Finally, re-emerging with power means understanding that this is not the end of the journey, it's just the next phase. You'll continue growing, you'll continue refining, but now you're operating from a place of quiet power. You've rebuilt, you've transformed, and you've returned not with permission, but with purpose. When you re-emerge with power, you do so from a place of internal validation, not external applause. You don't need anyone to tell you that you're ready. You know you're ready because you've done the work in silence. That inner certainty replaces the need for permission. This new chapter of your life is about bold action without over-explanation. You're not asking for advice on whether you should take the next step, you're taking it. You've learned to trust your judgment because it was sharpened in solitude, away from distractions. Re-emerging also means confronting the world without the fear of rejection. You understand now that not everyone will accept the new you, but that's no longer your concern. You've outgrown the need to be understood. You're focused on becoming, not being approved. The power you carry when you return is quiet but heavy. It's not loud or boastful, it's calm, steady, and undeniable. People feel it before you speak. They sense the difference in your presence, and it forces them to reassess who you are without you saying a word. This version of you no longer asks, "Am I ready?" You know you're ready because you've prepared in private. You've sacrificed, suffered, and rebuilt in silence. Now, when opportunities arise, you step into them fully without second-guessing yourself. Re-emerging with power changes how you approach challenges. You no longer see obstacles as threats, you see them as tests of your new identity. You're not afraid to be stretched because you trust the strength you built in the dark. You've trained for this. When you return, you set the tone. You don't adapt to other people's pace, you lead with your own. You've learned to move intentionally, and you refuse to let the chaos of the world pull you back into old patterns. You stay locked into your mission. The new you isn't swayed by opinions. You've built a solid foundation, and no amount of praise or criticism can shift you. You take feedback wisely, but you don't let it control you. Your actions are guided by discipline, not emotions. Re-emerging with power means stepping back into the world with a refined focus. You don't scatter your energy across meaningless tasks. You concentrate on what matters most and eliminate everything that doesn't contribute to your mission. You've also learned to protect your peace. The new you doesn't chase drama or engage in pointless conflicts. You conserve your energy for growth, creation, and contribution. You know that inner peace is the true sign of mastery, not public approval. When you return, you'll notice how different your conversations become. You're no longer interested in gossip, complaining, or small talk. You crave depth, growth, and real alignment. This change will either inspire people or push them away, and either outcome is fine. Your re-emergence shifts your environment naturally. You attract new opportunities and people who resonate with your new frequency. You stop chasing connections and start building partnerships that match your upgraded mindset and values. This phase of your journey is about stepping into leadership, not by title, but by action. You lead by example. People watch how you move, how you carry yourself, and how you stay disciplined without fanfare. That quiet leadership is more powerful than any speech. Re-emerging also means releasing the past fully. You don't keep one foot in the old world. You don't apologize for the distance you created to grow. You understand that the new you can't thrive if you keep dragging the old you along. You let go completely. You've also learned the power of silence. You know that not everything needs to be shared. You keep your moves private, not out of fear, but out of strategy. Privacy protects progress. It gives you the space to build without interference. When you re-enter the world, you bring with you a new level of patience. You're no longer in a rush to prove yourself. You know that mastery takes time, and you're willing to keep building quietly, knowing that the results will speak for you in the long run. You also come back with a sense of ownership. You own your decisions, your progress, and your path forward. No more blaming circumstances or waiting for the right moment. You create the right moment by acting decisively with clarity and courage. The re-emerged, you understands the weight of responsibility. You know that with this new power comes a duty to maintain it. You can't slip back into old habits. You've seen what happens when you let weakness take over, and you refuse to return there. Finally, re-emerging with power means accepting that this is just the beginning. You've rebuilt yourself, but the journey isn't over. You're committed to lifelong growth, knowing that each level you reach prepares you for the next. You don't need permission to evolve you, just keep moving forward. Chapter 12. Stay humble, stay hidden, stay hungry. The final lesson in transformation is simple but critical. Stay humble, stay hidden, and stay hungry. No matter how far you've come, remember that growth is a lifelong process. You're not finished, you're just getting started. The second you think you've arrived is the moment you start slipping backwards. Staying humble keeps your ego in check. Success can make people arrogant, but arrogance blinds you to your weaknesses. Humility keeps you learning, keeps you questioning, and keeps you improving. You don't assume you know everything, you stay open to growth. Staying hidden protects your process. Not every move needs to be broadcast. You don't have to share every plan, every win, or every strategy. Silence keeps you focused. It allows you to work without interference and evolve without interruption. Privacy is power. Hunger is the engine that keeps you moving. No matter how much you've achieved, you act like you're just getting started. You don't get comfortable. You don't settle. You keep chasing mastery because you know there's always another level, another lesson, another challenge to conquer. Staying humble means you don't let success get to your head. You treat every day like day one. You show up with the same focus, the same work ethic, and the same drive that built you in the first place. Complacency is the enemy of greatness, so you avoid it at all costs. When you stay hidden, you protect your energy. You don't waste time explaining yourself to people who don't understand your journey. You let your actions speak. You keep your head down and do the work, knowing that results are the loudest statement you can make. Hunger means you keep raising the bar. You don't get satisfied with yesterday's victories. You set new goals, new standards, and new challenges. Growth is not a one-time event, it's a lifestyle. Hunger ensures you never stop pushing forward. Humility reminds you that no matter how much you've grown, you still have blind spots. There's still more to learn, more to master, and more to refine. You stay coachable, you stay disciplined, and you stay open to correction because you know that ego is the fastest path to destruction. Hidden growth is sustainable growth. When you don't perform for the crowd, you don't burn out trying to impress them. You build quietly, consistently, and strategically. You avoid the spotlight until the spotlight is unavoidable because of your results. Staying hungry means keeping the fire alive inside you. You don't get soft just because life gets easier. You remember the hunger that drove you to change, and you protect it. You fuel it. You let it remind you that there's always more to build. Humility makes you a better leader. You don't look down on others, you help lift them up. You remember where you started. You stay grounded, knowing that true power is about service, not status. You use your growth to inspire, not to dominate. Staying hidden protects you from unnecessary noise. When no one knows your next move, no one can sabotage it. You keep your strategies close to your chest. You execute in silence, and by the time people see your results, it's too late for them to stop you. Hunger keeps you disciplined. When you're hungry, you don't skip steps. You don't cut corners. You stay consistent because you know that small daily actions build massive long-term success. The hungry mind is focused, driven, and unstoppable. Humility prevents you from believing your own hype. You don't get high on compliments or crippled by criticism. You stay neutral, focused on the work. You know that you're only as good as your next disciplined decision, not your last accomplishment. Staying hidden also protects your peace. You don't get caught up in competition or comparison because you're not in the race to be seen, you're in the race to be excellent. You keep your head down, build in private, and let the results create the noise. Hunger means you keep looking for new challenges. You don't get stuck doing the same thing forever. You expand your mind, develop new skills, and keep evolving. You understand that growth happens on the edge of discomfort, so you stay there. Humility teaches you to respect the process. You don't rush, you don't cut corners. You understand that mastery takes time, and you're willing to keep showing up every day, whether or not the world is watching. You trust the process because you've lived it. Staying hidden builds mental toughness. You don't need recognition to keep going. You don't need applause to validate your effort. You move in silence, knowing that true success is about what you build in private, not what you post in public. Hunger keeps your vision sharp. You don't get lazy or distracted because you're still chasing something bigger. You understand that the mission isn't complete and you're committed to the long game. The hungry never stop growing. At the end of this journey, remember, stay humble so you keep learning. Stay hidden so you keep building. Stay hungry so you never stop evolving. This is how you maintain the power you've created. This is how you become unstoppable, no, just once, but for life. Staying humble also keeps you connected to your roots. No matter how far you go, you never forget where you started. This memory fuels your gratitude and reminds you that the climb is more important than the peak. Humility keeps you grounded when life tries to pull you into ego traps. Remaining hidden preserves the mystery of your process. When people don't know your next move, they can't prepare for it. This gives you the advantage of surprise. You keep building in silence, catching the world off guard when you deliver results that no one saw coming. Hunger ensures you stay in motion. Success can make some people pause, but you keep moving forward. You understand that momentum is sacred. Once you have it, you protect it by staying in motion, small steps, big steps, but always forward. Humility keeps you teachable. The moment you believe you've figured it all out is the moment you stop growing. Staying humble means keeping your mind open to new lessons, new perspectives, and new strategies. It's about recognizing that there's always more to learn. Working in the shadows protects your integrity. When you build privately, you don't get caught in the trap of performative progress. You're not changing just to be seen. You're changing because it's who you are now. That difference creates lasting transformation. Hunger stops you from becoming complacent. It's easy to relax once you've made progress, but hunger reminds you that the goal is mastery, not mediocrity. You push yourself daily because you know you're capable of more, and you refuse to settle for less. Humility also makes you approachable. People respect those who grow but remain kind. You're not using your success to make others feel small, you're using it to show what's possible. True leaders stay humble because they understand the weight of responsibility that comes with power. Remaining hidden helps you stay focused on what matters. When you're not trying to impress others, you're free to put your energy into real growth. You don't waste time on optics, you spend time on execution. That focus compounds over time, making your results inevitable. Hunger keeps your vision alive. You don't lose sight of why you started. Even when progress feels slow, you stay committed because you know the end game is bigger than temporary comfort. Hunger reminds you that purpose matters more than ease. Humility removes the need for comparison. You're not worried about what anyone else is doing because you're focused on your own lane. You celebrate other people's wins without jealousy because you understand that their success doesn't take away from yours. Staying hidden helps you avoid unnecessary opinions. When you share too much, you invite feedback that can cloud your focus. But when you keep your moves private, you build in peace. You trust yourself, and that trust becomes your compass. Hunger pushes you to sharpen your skills. You don't stay stagnant just because you've improved. You refine, you practice, and you study. You're always looking for ways to level up, knowing that mastery is about continuous improvement, not reaching a finish line. Humility keeps you connected to discipline. You don't cut corners or rely on luck. You stay consistent because you know that the foundation of greatness is daily work. Success built on shortcuts crumbles fast, but success built on humility and discipline lasts. Remaining hidden also protects your mental health. You don't get caught in the trap of public validation. You don't let likes or followers define your worth. You build your confidence in private, and that kind of confidence is unshakable because it's not based on outside noise. Hunger drives you to face new challenges. You don't avoid discomfort, you seek it out. You understand that growth comes from struggle, so you willingly put yourself in situations that stretch you. Hunger makes you brave enough to do the hard things. Humility keeps you grateful. You don't take your progress for granted. You remember the days when you prayed for the problems you have now. That gratitude keeps you grounded and reminds you that every level of success comes with new lessons to learn. Staying hidden helps you maintain control over your narrative. People only see what you choose to show. You don't let anyone write your story for you. You move quietly, letting your actions define you rather than rumors or assumptions. Hunger keeps you learning from failure. You don't fear mistakes because you know they're part of the journey. Each failure is a lesson, and hunger makes you eager to learn from it. You adjust, improve, and keep going stronger than before. Humility ensures you never forget the importance of service. You grow for yourself, but you also grow to help others. You use your success to inspire, guide, and elevate those around you. True strength is lifting others while you climb. At the core of this chapter is a simple truth. Stay humble so you don't get blinded by success. Stay hidden so you don't get distracted by attention. Stay hungry so you don't get stuck in comfort. This is how you remain unstoppable, just for a season, but for life. When you disappear to rebuild, you don't owe anyone an explanation. You don't need to tell them what you're doing. You don't need to post progress updates. The real transformation happens in private. By the time you return, you'll be stronger, calmer, and unshakable. And when the world finally sees you again, they'll wonder how you did it. But you'll know the truth. You built it in silence. You rebuilt yourself in the dark. And now, nothing can break you. Your quiet season wasn't a pause. It was preparation.